My aunt's name is Carrie. She was the second oldest of six. Her only older sibling was my Uncle Larry. Uncle Larry was developmentally disabled. Because Larry was always so much work for my grandmother, my aunt became like a second mother in the home. Also because of the difficulties that my Uncle Larry had in speaking, she was often just called Sister. My dad, the next in order, picked up on this and called her Sister from his youth right up until mine. Even though there were 3 boys and 3 girls in the set, there was never any doubt who my brother and I were referring to when we asked for Auntie's sister. Auntie's sister is one of the most selfless people I have ever known. Once she was an adult, she took over a lot of the daily care for Uncle Larry. Uncle Larry and I always did fine with each other, but our friendship really blossomed when I was in junior high and started helping him with bowling. Uncle Larry did bowling through the Special Olympics. He didn't have the strength to lift a bowling ball. I would help him set the ramp, bring the ball to him, and then he would push it down the ramp and watch it knock the pins down. After bowling, we would often go to dinner together at the local Burgerville. Him, my grandmother, and Auntie's sister would have burgers together and discuss life. I never really thought much of it growing up. I knew Uncle Larry was different, but he was Uncle Larry. He cheated at the card game war, partly because he couldn't count the number of shapes on the cards, and partly because he liked to win. So no one really played with him. He had an invisible friend that didn't mind losing, though. He loved Christmas. Not just for his own presents, but for seeing what everyone else would get, too. He was a neat freak, and always needed everything just so. Especially his clothes. He was different. But then, I wrote a 20K word count blog post on why I think Matthew was written in Hebrew. I'm not really in a place to judge people for being different. So when I was interested in a girl my sophomore year of high school, and she wanted to meet me after school on Wednesday, all I thought to say was, "I can't. I have bowling with my uncle." But the bowling alley was only a block away from the high school, and she agreed to meet me there. And then I learned all I needed to know about her in one interaction. Once she laid eyes on my uncle, the next words out of her mouth were, "What's wrong with him?" Nothing was wrong with him. And that was the end of that. It was, however, the beginning of a new dating strategy. Don't tell my family about this, though. It's not the kind of thing that's generally smiled upon in our circles. You see, Andy's sister is a rather unusual way for a nephew to refer to his aunt. When there were 3 girls in the litter, of which 2 remained by the time I have any memory, it is even more peculiar. So peculiar as to occupy the entire 20-minute conversation while we drive out to meet the other members of my family. If one accepts the unusual naming convention of Auntie's sister, one rarely bats an eyelash at the idea of Uncle Larry and Auntie's sister living together. Unfortunately, I couldn't let my dad know about the test I was running. Because of things he would say, I had to admit on the drive that they were brother and sister living together on at least 2 occasions, but not one date ever questioned the idea of my dad's eldest siblings living together in their old age. It happens. If you're going to have a roommate, why not a sibling? Right? And as I introduced one date after another to Uncle Larry and Annie's sister, I would learn a lot about said date in a hurry. I did finally build up the courage to let my dad in on the test I ran. If by built up the courage, I mean I admitted to my misdeeds after my wife told him some time after our 5th wedding anniversary. My aunt is pretty smart, and I'm pretty sure she figured out what was going on the 2nd or 3rd time I brought a girl out for 5 minutes, and then she never saw the poor startled thing ever again. At one point Uncle Larry asked me, "What was that?" when a short-term date ended with her afraid to shake his hand, and I told him about my test. He seemed to think the idea was funny, and seemed to play along after that, but otherwise never gave any real hint that he knew anything about what I was doing except to occasionally offer a favorable opinion on a girl I brought out to meet him. My wife thought the test was hilarious after she learned what it was. I mean, she obviously passed, so she would, right? My dad thinks it's far less funny. No one else in the family has volunteered their opinion, which means that if they know, they don't approve. I have no regrets. Uncle Larry didn't seem to mind, and it was very, very effective at revealing the inner person that a date didn't want to show. If I had known a little more about myself, I might have even moved the test earlier in the dating process. A few times, I dated a girl for a month or more before finding out who she really was. Little did I know at the time that my own chromosomes were stacked against me. I have what's called a balanced translocation. It doesn't impact me, but it means that I'm far more likely to have developmentally disabled children than healthy children. I wasn't just testing my wife for my uncle. I was unknowingly testing her for our children. My oldest son has Wolff-Hirschhorn syndrome. That doesn't keep him from loving the water, though. He has joined the Longview Pirate Shark swim team through the Special Olympics, and he loves it. He also does cheerleading through the Special Olympics. So this movie felt like home in many ways. Marcus is an out-of-work professional basketball coach. He has personality issues that keep him from being able to keep a job for long. He loses a job as an assistant coach after trying to overrule the head coach, gets drunk, then has a low-speed crash with a cop car. As a punishment, he is given community service coaching a local Special Olympics basketball team. His initial reaction to his team is disgust and disdain. As I learned in my teenage years, you can learn a lot about someone by their first meeting with the developmentally, physically, and mentally disabled. Through the movie, though, Marcus develops a relationship with several of the guys on his team, and even a romantic relationship with the sister of one of the guys on the team. At the end of the movie, Marcus gets offered a job at a team that has undergone scandal, and ultimately turns it down when he realizes that they're using not only him, but his Special Olympics team to paint over their scandal. Disabled people factor into a lot of theological discussions. We have a tendency to think that our superiority is tied to our intelligence or our physical ability, or what we contribute to society, or something like that. This leads to diminishing the disabled. However, at several points the scriptures seem to highlight disabled characters. Sometimes they are healed. Sometimes they are not. Mephibosheth was one of David's most loyal and respected servants despite his disability, for example. To me, it has been clear since I was a small child that how a person treats the disabled is a window into their soul. It's easy to be kind to those that you hope will pay you back again someday. How you treat those that have no hope of returning a favor is the real sign of who you really are.